This is the fourth in our series, Faith Conversations. Faith is a conversation. Faith is not a doctrine. Faith is a conversation. It's rich, it's nuanced, it's challenging. In community is where we find the power, the different richness of people's understanding and experience. And today we're going to tackle one of the most difficult issues of faith, which is fear. All of us experience fear in large and small ways. There's so much to fear. There is the global warming. There is the relationships that we're concerned about. There is illness. There's so much that we have to fear. And this story that we're reading from the scripture really deals with fear in so many different levels. The woman is afraid of the disease and it isolates her. The society isolates her. Even the healing becomes difficult to acknowledge. The man is very afraid when he gets news that his daughter has died. And Jesus confronts fear. Jesus engages fear. Fear is real, but fear can be overcome. And that's what we want to look at this morning. And there are several points that rise out of this story that I want to highlight, and then I want to invite us to have conversation around these tables after communion and to really share our own experiences of fear and overcoming fear. So the things I want to look at this morning are talking to fear. Jesus engages fear. A lot of times we want to deny fear. If we're afraid of elevators, then we don't ride elevators. If we're, you try to avoid. Jesus wants to invite us to engage and to talk with fear. And then touch or connection. Isolation can make fear even more overwhelming, but reaching out to touch somebody, to connect with somebody can make a difference. And there's great power in the touch when the woman is able to reach out and connect with Jesus. And then finally, trust. There is a power that's greater than fear. The first worship song that we sang today comes from 2 Timothy chapter 7. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but God has given us a spirit of power and love. So fear is not meant to overwhelm us. We have a spirit of power. So I want to look at each of these. First of all, can we just talk a little bit about fear? Fear is real. There are so many different reasons to fear. There are so many situations to fear. I think of Dr. Ford, who has experienced sexual assault when she was 15 years old. And that experience was so overwhelming that rather than tell anyone about it, she ended up moving to the other coast, to California, and really reestablishing her life there. And then finally, this thing that has just she's not been able to get away from it, and it finally emerges. It's so ironic to me that this is around a person who is nominated to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is like the one branch in our government, if it's actually a democracy, the one branch in our government is supposed to be a check. It's supposed to be the place where you're able to get some justice, able to air your grievances, able to really deal with stuff, and yet this woman raises this experience that she's had, assault that she had at the hands of this Supreme Court nominee, and everybody we don't want to hear about it, threatening, to the point of threatening this woman's life. What kind of a society is it where when a woman is assaulted and brings it to the light of day, more often than not, she experiences worse consequences than the one who assaulted her? What kind of democracy is that? What kind of society is that? We're a society that's based on fear in many ways. Donald Trump has actually put it out there, actually articulated it for us. The book by Woodward, the journalist, is called Fear, and based on a conversation he had with Donald Trump where he asked him, what is power for you? And he said, well, power, I hate to use the word, is fear. I mean, just to put that out there. And, you can see it in the policies. It's all about divide and conquer. It's all about making fear. Authoritarian power is based on fear, and that's the kind of world we're living in. So it's no wonder that we're experiencing fear in so many different ways. So first of all, let's look at talking to our fear, directly confronting, engaging the reality of fear. Fear is not the enemy. The things that bring fear may well be the enemy. The racism that makes people of color fear, in particular, the police, for example, or the patriarchy that makes women fear bringing out the realities of their assault. That's the enemy. The racism, the patriarchy, the violence, that's the enemy. Fear itself is a useful emotion. You know, fear is really just a warning about things that could threaten us. And if we have no fear at all, we can be in great danger. I like this image that Elizabeth Gilbert uses in this book, Big Magic, where she says that fear is along for the journey. Fear brings important information, but you want to keep fear in the back seat. Fear should not be in the driver's seat. Fear should not be handling the steering wheel. We should have the autonomy to be able to drive the car and to have fear in the back seat where we can talk to it, but it doesn't control the situation. So I had an experience that kind of illustrates that I want to share because I think it kind of looks at some of that. In 2005, my family and I were on a trip to Adirondack Park, the most remote area of New York State. We got onto a road in the middle of Adirondack Park where there were no cars. I mean, we were going so deep into the wilderness. We parked our car and we walked for 3 days back into this wilderness. Clear skies, swam in clear lakes. I got so relaxed that I was no longer in touch with fear. We got back in the car and we were driving back along this remote mountain road and there were no cars on the road and I was just so relaxed. I was as relaxed as I could be. Fear was not in the back seat. Fear was not in the car. And that's problematic when you're driving a car because driving a car is dangerous, whether you realize it or not. And it's important to have that knowledge of what can be. So we came around a turn and it looked to me like the road went straight. There was a driveway that went to a house and that went straight, but unbeknownst to me, the road actually curved to the right. And I didn't catch the road soon enough and I went across the center line just at the moment that the only car in an hour, an SUV, was also coming around that curve, and we barely missed hitting it head on. Now, we were only going 20, 25 miles an hour, but that's enough when you hit head on. You know, car totaled, entire family in ambulances, 3 ambulances going 60 miles to the nearest hospital. Nora had the worst of it, ruptured kidney. Lisa also had internal injuries. Becky had broken ribs. I had a broken foot. So we were in the hospital 10 days. And I went from the place of no fear to the place of the greatest fear I have ever experienced in my life. That first night, lying in intensive care with Nora, they weren't able to stop the bleeding, so she was still in intensive care. And I was lying on a cot with her in intensive care at midnight when the doctor came in and told me that we're a regional hospital. We just can't do the surgery that your daughter needs. We're going to have to airlift her to Albany. I about lost it. I mean, that was like the low point of my life. And I began desperately praying. You know, there's prayer and then there's desperate prayer. And about an hour later, the doctor came back in and said, we've been on the phone with the surgeons in Albany. They've explained the procedure to us. We do have a guy that can do it. We're going to do it in the morning. So they did it in the morning. And, 9 days later, she was released from the hospital. And we all went on our way. But life was not the same after that because we went from a place where fear was not in the car at all to where fear had a grip on the steering wheel. Every time I drove, I didn't drive for a couple of months because my foot had to heal, but when I did start driving again, I had was grabbing the steering wheel. There was too much fear, overwhelming fear. Many of us had this experience. It could be in relationships, it could be in school situation, employment situation, financial situation, where something hits you so hard, something overwhelms you so deeply that fear has taken over. Fear becomes a paralyzing force that you can't shake. And it got to the point where I said, I've got to face this fear. I've got to do something to shake this fear. I can't continue to drive this way. And one day I was at a retreat a little ways upstate, and I said, you know what, I'm going to drive back up to Adirondack Park. I'm going to face this fear. And so I drove. It was like 2.5 hours from where we were, way up into Adirondack Park, right into the center of it. When I turned onto the road that we had the accident on, literally my hands were shaking so bad that I didn't think I could physically stay on the road. I mean, everything in my body was saying, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. And I had to physically force myself to drive on that road. My hands were shaking now, just telling the story. This is quite a while ago, but so I got back to that place, and I pulled off the road right at the place where we'd had the accident. And I could see that they had put some signs up. They'd actually put a big sign that said dangerous curve ahead. They'd put in a mirror. They had done some things to make it more safe. And just as I sat there, I found that I could actually drive back out of the park without my hands shaking. I had to engage that fear. I had to talk to it. Yes, this happened. Yes, this is real. But it doesn't mean it's going to continue to happen every time. It's like the story of the boy whose master sent him out to catch a rabbit. And he went out, had no idea how to catch a rabbit, and he's out in the forest, and lo and behold, he sees a rabbit running along full speed. Boom, runs right into a tree, knocks itself out. So he goes over and picks the rabbit up, puts it in a bag, takes it back to his master. The master's amazed. You caught a rabbit? So then for the next 3 years, the boy's out there waiting by that tree, waiting for a rabbit to run into it again. When we have an intense experience, there's something in us that expects it to happen again. But we can talk with our fear. We can engage our fear. We can find healing. There is healing. It's not easy. It's a difficult road. The second thing that I think is so important in this particular story is the woman reaches out to touch Jesus, connect, to make a connection. Fear can often isolate us. We feel like we can't tell anyone. Dr. Ford hasn't told anyone about this story. It was like many years into their marriage before she even was able to tell her husband, and then finally a therapist. We get isolated in our fear. We think we're the only one that's experiencing it, so we shrink away. In this particular situation, this woman was deeply isolated by her fear. Not only did she have this physical condition that she had been to doctors and used all her money, she had. Can you imagine the lack of trust she had after she's spent all her money, gone to many physicians? None of them have done anything for her, but she only grew worse. Add on top of that, society stigmatizes her. Ancient society, this is a bleeding disease. She becomes, has to be quarantined. She's not allowed to touch other people according to that society. So she's deeply isolated. And yet she determines that she is going to reach out and touch. She hears about Jesus. She hears about the healing power. And she takes small steps. And I think it's important to realize that we can take small steps. We don't have to take huge, dramatic steps. When we're paralyzed by fear, we may not be able to take a dramatic step, but maybe we can take a small step. And she determined she's going to try to reach out to this person. This is someone she trusts, that maybe she can find some healing. So in the anonymity of the crowd, she reaches out her hand. If I can just touch the hem of the garment. Don't even have to touch the person, doesn't have to acknowledge it, doesn't have to be public, nobody has to know about it. If I can just reach out and touch the hem of the garment, and that very simple touch became transforming. There was so much power in that connection that not only did this woman feel it, did she immediately feel the healing in her body, but Jesus also felt the power of the touch. Even among the crowds, the disciples were saying, well, how can you say someone touched you? Lots of people touch you. People are bumping into you. No, I felt the power of that touch, the power of moving across isolation, reaching out and forming community. There's nothing more powerful. So, road to trust. When we're afraid, we need to be able to trust. We need to be able to find a restoration of trust. We need to be able to restore trust in ourselves. We need to be able to restore trust in community. We need to be able to restore trust in life in some kind of way. Jesus says it's your faith that made you well. Your willingness to trust. Trust is not like a thing that comes out of the sky and lodges in your heart. Trust is something that happens little by little out of little acts of faith that begin to restore trust. Your faith, your willingness to reach out and touch, your willingness to be bold, your willingness to try to do some little thing that will continue your healing journey has made you well. That is where the healing lies. Restoring of trust. Restoring of trust, it's so important. I remember when I was in high school, college, I had a fear of intimacy, a fear particularly of romantic intimacy. It was due to a number of experiences I'd had and just some things, and I met this woman that I ended up marrying, and there were many things that we were attracted to. Sorry about this. I didn't ask you if I could share this. My apologies. There were many things that we were attracted to, but I would say the most important thing for me was trust. There was something different about this. I knew I could trust this. There was something deep in my soul that told me, you can trust this. Trust is so important to be able to restore that trust in our lives. And we know in our gut what we can trust and what we can't trust. And sometimes it's small steps that we have to take to be able to restore that trust. Jesus says, don't be afraid, only believe. So believe, trust is the opposite of fear. That we can restore, and it may not be 100% trust and 0% fear. The fear is going to be there. The fear needs to be there. There needs to be some fear. If I ever get up to preach a sermon and I'm not afraid, it's not going to happen. I've been doing this 30 years, and every time I get up here to preach, I'm afraid. I'm afraid it's not going to go right. I'm afraid I'm going to completely forget where I am. I'm afraid, there's all these kind of things that go through my mind. And that fear can be turned into energy. That fear can be turned into spirit. Spirit can move in that. Spirit can overcome that. It may not be 100% belief and 0% fear. There may be some fear, but belief is powerful. Trust is powerful. Learning what we can trust. Taking a step, a little step. I would say there's nothing more powerful that we could do as a faith community than build trust. There's a lot of things we got to do. We got to protest. We got to act. We got to reach out with compassion. There's so many things we need to do. But I would say that in a society that's based on fear, where we finally have a president who will actually articulate that this government is first and foremost about fear, about creating fear, that, who can you trust? I know we're excited about Nike taking on, Kaepernick. That's great, and that's exciting, and it's great to see the powerful fighting against each other. It's great to see Nike against the government. That's beautiful. That's excellent. That's always a good thing. But Nike is also funding Republican candidates for the election. They're paying way more money to support Republican candidates than Democrat. They are trying to keep in place the very thing that propaganda-wise they're saying they're against. Who can you trust? We kind of learn to be skeptical. We have to be skeptical. It's almost a defense mechanism. You have to be skeptical. I would say that if we could build authentic trust in this room, it would be a revolutionary act that might just overthrow the systems of oppression. If we can build genuine trust at a small place and that trust begins, now that's hard work. That's easier said than done. It's easy to say, we are building trust here. But we know that we bring all the same kinds of mistrust into this space that we have in the world. Some magic thing doesn't happen when we walk through that door. Even within this space, we can generate mistrust by things that it's hard work to build trust in an intimate relationship, let alone in a community. But what are the things we can do to build trust? What are the ways we can put in place systems of accountability? What are the ways that we can build in ways that we can know that we can call on each other? How can we realistically begin to build trust. It's based on our faith in God. Jesus encourages us to engage with God. We can trust God. We can trust God. God, throughout the scriptures, that's one of the things that is such a dominant theme. God is faithful. God's steadfast love endures forever. God is with you. God created this world. Get out in nature. Nature is a place where you learn to trust. Nature has been deeply violated. But the places where nature is able to continue to run pure, where lakes are pure, where rivers run clean, where trees are still, the forest canopy is still intact, just being there, just being in that environment helps to begin to restore trust. What are the environments we can be in that restore trust? What are the steps we can take as faith community to build authentic trust? Even if we take 3 or 4 steps forward and take 1 or 2 steps back, how can we keep being on that journey, moving toward greater and greater trust? Trust is the revolution. Trust is the transformation. Trust is the gateway to the reign of God. Gracious God, we open ourselves to you. We open ourselves, oh God, to learning to trust you, who made us, who knows us. In that relationship, God, we open ourselves to learning to trust ourselves, to learning to trust that you have made us just as you intended to make us. That everything about us that society may not approve of may well be the hidden gem of transformation. Learning to trust, oh God, that you have created us, you have created the world in beauty, life-giving. Holy God, may we build trust among one another. May we learn to love one another as we love ourselves, as we love you. We give you thanks, God, for your steadfast love for us, your forgiveness for us, your compassion for us, your deep, deep desire that we live the fullness of the life that you have created us to live. Holy God, we open ourselves to overcoming fear in the power of your Spirit.